What if I told you that the brother who called me worthless in front of my entire family had been a resident in my building for 4 years without knowing it? My brother Marcus stood up at a dining table surrounded by 40 members of our family and told the room with a smile on his face and not a single hesitation in his voice that I was not built for success. Not in private, not in a moment of anger he might later apologize for. In public. At a table loaded with food my aunt had been cooking since 6 in the morning, under string lights she had hung herself in the backyard, with cousins and uncles and elderly relatives who had known me since I was 7 years old, sitting close enough to reach out and touch my arm. He said it the way people say things they have said so many times internally that speaking them out loud feels like a formality. Casual, comfortable, completely certain of the audience. I remember the smell of the room. Barbecue smoke drifting in through the screen door, sweet potato pie cooling on the kitchen counter, someone's little cousin running through the hallway behind us, rattling the floorboards. I remember the faces. The uncle who laughed first, short and reflexive, the kind of laugh that comes before the brain fully processes what the mouth is reacting to. The cousin who looked at her plate. My mother, who had been mid-reach for the bread basket, who stopped reaching and set her hand flat on the tablecloth instead. My father, who cleared his throat once and said something about the weather in a voice designed to move the room forward. Nobody pushed back. Not one person at that table said a word in my direction. I excused myself after 4 minutes. I know it was 4 because I counted them on the back porch, standing in the night air with my hands in my pockets, looking out at my aunt's dark backyard while the sound of the dinner continued behind me through the screen door. I was not crying. I was not composing a response. I was thinking about a file. A specific file sitting in my property management app, on a building 4 minutes from where we were all sitting, on a street Marcus drove down every single morning on his way to work. I went back inside, finished my plate, thanked my aunt, drove home in complete silence. He had no idea what he had just set in motion. My name is Darius Webb. I am 36 years old. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, and for the past 7 years I have worked in commercial real estate investment. Before that, I spent 7 years as a certified public accountant at a Big Four firm downtown, which is where I learned something that has served me better than almost anything else I have ever been taught. Money is not loud. The people who actually have it, the ones who have built something real and lasting and structurally sound, are almost never the ones performing it at a dinner table. I am the middle child. Marcus is 41, our younger sister Priya is 31, and I am the one who existed, for most of my adult life, in the space between them. Not the oldest, not the youngest, not the loudest. Not the one anyone thought to follow up with when the family group chat went quiet. I was simply there, reliable, present, unremarkable to everyone who had already decided what I was. In 2019, I formed Irongate Holdings, LLC, a single-member commercial property investment company registered in the state of North Carolina. My first acquisition came in March of 2020, a mid-rise commercial complex on Tryon Street in Uptown Charlotte. 12 suites across 4 floors, 11 of them occupied within the first year. The 12th filled in January 2021 when a financial services firm called Callaway & Bright signed a standard 12-month lease on Suite 204. Monthly rent, $6,200. I remember reviewing that lease agreement at my kitchen table on a Tuesday evening, initialing the pages, noting the resident name, and thinking nothing specific about it. It was a clean lease, good credit profile, solid references, standard terms. I filed it and moved on.
What I did not know in that moment, and would not know for several more weeks, was that Marcus had just started a new position at Callaway and Bright Financial Group, that he would walk into Suite 204 for the first time on a Monday morning in February 2021 and set his laptop bag down on a desk 4 minutes from a building with my name on the deed. He worked there for 4 years. In those 4 years, he never once sat across from me at a family dinner and asked what I was doing with my life. Not once.
I want to be precise about this, because precision matters to me, and because the truth of it is more damaging than any exaggeration I could reach for. My brother Marcus is not a monster. He is something quieter and in some ways more difficult to name. He is a person who decided very early what each member of his family was worth, and then spent the following 2 decades behaving in perfect accordance with that assessment, without ever once revisiting it. The first time I remember it landing with real weight was at my father's retirement dinner in 2019. Marcus gave a speech. It was genuinely good, warm and specific and well delivered, the kind of speech that makes a room feel something. He went around the table and named each sibling, said something particular about each one, something that showed he had been paying attention. When he reached me, he paused, half a beat too long, then pivoted smoothly to our sister Priya without completing the sentence. The room moved with him. Nobody noted the gap. I sat with a water glass in my hand and watched it happen and did not say a single word. The second incident was smaller in setting and larger in what it revealed. In 2021, our mother needed help covering a medical bill. It was not a catastrophic amount, but it was more than she wanted to ask any one person for alone. Marcus volunteered to coordinate. He called Marcus, called Priya, called aunts and uncles, assigned amounts, organized the timeline. He did not call me. I found out through Priya, who mentioned it casually, who assumed I already knew. I called my bank that evening and sent a wire transfer for more than any other single contribution in the pool. I told no one the amount. I did not bring it up at the next family dinner or the one after that. I filed it the same way I filed everything. Then there was the graduation party. A cousin finishing her master's degree, a backyard full of family, late afternoon sun and plastic cups, and the particular looseness of a celebration that has been going on long enough for people to stop being careful. Marcus introduced me to a group of relatives I had not seen in several years. He put his hand briefly on my shoulder and said, "This is my brother Darius, still figuring things out." I was 34. I had just closed on my 3rd commercial property the previous Thursday. I smiled. I shook every hand in that circle. I said it was good to see everyone. And I filed that one too. The summer gathering happens every year at my aunt's house on the east side of Charlotte. It is not a formal event. There is no invitation, no dress code, no agenda. It is simply the understanding that on the last Saturday of July, everybody shows up, everybody brings something, and the afternoon stretches into evening without anyone particularly noticing the transition. This year, there were 41 people across 2 floors and a backyard. Long, folding tables pushed together in the dining room, plates passed hand to hand, the particular volume of a large family that has been together long enough to talk over each other without offense. Somewhere around the midpoint of the meal, an uncle suggested we go around the table with updates, career news, life news, anything worth sharing. It is the kind of tradition that feels warm in theory and occasionally draws blood in practice. It moved around the table the way these things do: graduations and promotions and new apartments, and someone's daughter starting college in the fall. When it reached the section of the table where Marcus and I were sitting, Marcus leaned back in his chair with the ease of a man who has never once been uncertain of his reception in a room and said, "I'll go. Just got named senior associate at Callaway and Wright. 6 years of work, but we got there." Applause from the cousins. A whistle from somewhere down the table. My father nodding with the specific pride he reserved for things he understood the value of. Then Marcus turned, just slightly, in my direction and said, "Darius, he's been figuring things out since 2015. Some people just aren't built for success." He said it lightly. That was the part that landed heaviest. Not with malice, not with heat, but with the complete comfort of a person making a joke about something he considered settled fact. 3 cousins laughed. An uncle smiled into his cup. My mother's hand stopped moving on the tablecloth. My father looked at the window. I did not respond. I picked up my fork. I finished what was on my plate. I excused myself after 4 minutes, stood on the back porch in the warm July air, and counted my own breathing until it was even again. Then I went back inside. Then I drove home. Then I opened the Irongate Holdings app at a red light on Tryon Street, scrolled to Suite 204, and looked at the lease renewal date. 91 days. I had been patient for 4 years. I could manage 91 more days. I pulled the complete lease history on Suite 204 the following morning. Not because I needed to. I had the numbers memorized the way accountants memorize things they interact with regularly, cleanly, and without effort. But I wanted to see it laid out in full. I wanted to look at it the way you look at something you have always known was there, but never held directly in your hands. I made coffee. I sat at my kitchen table. I opened the Irongate Holdings portal on my laptop and pulled every document associated with the Callaway and Bright tenancy, from the first page of the original lease agreement to the most recent monthly payment confirmation. Lease commencement date, January 15, 2021. Monthly rent, $6,200. Lease term, 12 months, renewed twice at standard intervals. Total payments received from Callaway and Bright Financial Group over 3 years and 4 months, $249,600. $249,600, deposited in 40 consecutive monthly increments into an Irongate Holdings LLC operating account managed through my property firm, processed without my name appearing on a single document that would have crossed Marcus's desk or appeared on his radar in any form. I had attended 2 previous renewal meetings for Suite 204. Both were handled by my property management representative, a composed and thorough woman named Sandra, who ran resident communications with the kind of quiet efficiency I had specifically hired her for. My name appeared nowhere in those meetings. The lease agreement listed the landlord as Irongate Holdings, LLC. The payment portal listed the managing entity as Irongate Holdings, LLC. Marcus had written the name of my company on 40 consecutive checks without ever connecting it to the brother he had introduced at a graduation party as the one still figuring things out. I sat with that for a moment. Just a moment. Then I scrolled to the upcoming renewal notice. Standard 12-month renewal, an 8% rate increase pending landlord confirmation and resident signature. The meeting had already been scheduled by Sandra for the following month. Conference room on the 4th floor of the Tryon Street building. I read the file 4 times. Then I called Sandra. I told her the meeting details were fine, the date was fine, the agenda was fine. I had one adjustment. I would be attending personally, as the landlord. She asked if I wanted her to add my name to the agenda. I told her yes. My full name. Both words. I prepared for that meeting the way I have prepared for every significant professional engagement of my adult life, completely, methodically, without leaving anything to chance or circumstance or the particular mercy of a room that has not yet decided how it feels about you. I called Sandra the morning after our conversation and walked her through exactly what I needed. A full landlord presentation packet, updated building amenities report, revised lease terms with the 8% rate increase clearly documented and supported with comparable market data for the Tryon Street corridor, a formal letter of introduction identifying me as managing member of Irongate Holdings, LLC, to be placed at every seat at the conference table before the Callaway and Bright team arrived. She did not ask why. Sandra has worked with me for 3 years and understands that when I give an instruction with that particular quality of stillness in my voice, it does not require elaboration. The packet was on my desk by Thursday. I reviewed every page twice. I selected my outfit the evening before the meeting. Charcoal suit, white dress shirt, no tie. Not because I was trying to make a statement, but because I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a landlord conducting a routine lease renewal. Nothing more, nothing less. I arrived at the Tryon Street building 7 minutes early. I signed in at the lobby desk, took the elevator to the 4th floor, and walked into the conference room while it was still empty. I set my portfolio on the table. I poured water into the glass in front of me. I sat down at the head of the table and opened my documents and waited. I heard them before I saw them, voices in the hallway, the particular sound of colleagues mid-conversation, the kind of easy professional chatter that happens between people who share an office and a routine and a complete lack of awareness that anything unusual is about to occur. The door opened. 3 people from Callaway and Bright walked in ahead of Marcus. He was last through the door, still talking, head turned toward the colleague beside him, one hand gesturing through the tail end of whatever point he was making. Then he looked up. His eyes found me at the head of the table. I watched his face move through confusion, then recognition, then something that had no clean name, but lived in the space between disbelief and a very specific and private kind of dread. I looked up from my portfolio. I made eye contact. And I said with complete professionalism and not a single degree of personal inflection, "Good morning. I'm Darius Webb, managing member of Iron Gate Holdings. I'll be leading today's renewal discussion." The meeting lasted 44 minutes. I led every section of it. The building amenities update, the market rate analysis, the revised lease terms, the 8% increase documentation, the renewal timeline. I answered questions from the Callaway and Bright representatives with the same measured professionalism I would have brought to any resident renewal, regardless of who was sitting across the table. Marcus did not speak directly to me once during those 44 minutes. He asked one question about parking validation, directed it at Sandra's empty chair, and then wrote something in his notebook that I did not try to read. When the renewal documents were signed and the Callaway and Bright team began gathering their things and filtering out into the hallway, I stayed seated. I closed my portfolio, I poured the last of my water, and I waited. Marcus lingered by the door until the last colleague had gone. Then he came back into the room and sat down across from me at the conference table, in the same chair he had occupied for the entire meeting, and looked at me for a long moment without speaking. Then he asked, quietly, with none of the ease that usually lived in his voice, "How long?" I told him, "Since March 2020. He nodded slowly, the way people nod when they are not agreeing with something, but simply acknowledging that it is real and cannot be undone. He looked at the table. Then he asked why I had never told anyone. I looked at him evenly and let the silence sit for exactly as long as it needed to. Then I said, "Nobody ever asked what I was building." He had no response to that. I did not wait for one. I picked up my portfolio, thanked him for his time the way I would thank any resident, and walked out of the conference room and down the hallway and into the elevator and through the lobby and out onto Tryon Street, where the mid-morning Charlotte sun was doing what it does in late summer, pressing down warm and indifferent and completely unbothered by the small and significant things happening beneath it. The family found out the way families always do, gradually and sideways, through a cousin's phone call and a group chat message and a conversation that spread like weather across 3 area codes. My mother called me that evening. She did not ask about the building, or the meeting, or Marcus, or the lease, or any of it. She asked if I was okay. I told her I was. I sat on my balcony that night looking out over the Charlotte skyline and felt something settle inside me that had been shifting for a very long time. Not triumph, not the hot satisfaction of a score settled, just stillness. The particular stillness of a person who has finally stopped waiting for the people who were supposed to know him best to decide he was worth knowing. I had never needed their permission, I just hadn't known that yet. And now, sitting above the city I had been quietly building inside of for 7 years, I finally did. I have thought about that conference room many times since that morning. Not the look on Marcus's face when he walked through the door, though I would be dishonest if I said I had forgotten it. What I think about most is the drive to work that day. The 7 minutes early, the water glass I filled before anyone else arrived, the portfolio I opened on the table in an empty room while I waited for the moment to become what it had always been moving toward. Because here is what I want you to understand before you close this video. The building did not make me worth something. The lease agreement did not make me worth something. The 44-minute meeting and the signed renewal documents and the look on my brother's face did not make me worth something. I was worth something long before any of that existed. The problem was never my value. The problem was that I had spent years quietly accepting other people's assessments of it, as though they had the authority to make that determination. They did not. Nobody who has ever dismissed you, overlooked you, or performed your failure in front of an audience has that authority either. What they have is an audience. What you have is time and silence, and the particular power of a person who has stopped explaining themselves and started building instead. Build something they cannot ignore. Build something with your name on the deed. And when the moment arrives, and it will arrive, show up 7 minutes early. If this story stayed with you, tell me in the comments where you are watching from today.